Welcome back. For the next step in the 4-H landscape design project, we're going to begin to give the design form and geometry. So if you remember from the last exercise, we've completed our functional diagram where we had these areas that were kind of demarked with these bubbles. Again, they do not represent the actual geometry, just approximate size and approximate location. So for this exercise, we want to think about different types of geometry. So I'm going to go through a few of those. We have, for the first one, we have rectilinear geometry. And in that case, we're using a grid as a base, and all of the lines that we're going to draw are going to align with the grid. And so the grid in our project represents a square that is 5 feet by 5 feet. And so if we're doing horizontal, we're going to go horizontal. Vertical, we could make shapes that are squares or rectangles, or we could make complex shapes that are more zigzag and overlap or intersect each other. And so, but this is simple. We just kind of work around the grid and begin to think about how those forms come together. You can see the examples. For the next type of geometry that we have is called rectilinear 45. And in this case, the forms are either on the grid or they're at a 45-degree angle to the grid. So we could, again, move along the grid, horizontal, vertical. We could move corner to corner diagonal, back on the grid, back diagonal, back on the grid, come across, diagonal, diagonal. And so we begin to make different forms this way. They could be very complicated geometry. They could be intersect each other. But again, you're either moving across the grid horizontally, vertically on the grid, or you're moving corner to corner. Those are the types of lines that you can make using the 45 rectilinear geometry. The next type is called arctangent, and for the arctangent geometry, we're going to use the grid again. We're going to use horizontal lines, we're going to use vertical lines, and then we're going to use arcs. And the arcs are going to go corner to corner. And so you could go from this corner to this corner, like such, come down, come back over, and go another corner. We could add to that geometry. Come over, come back down. And so all of the geometry, and these are just kind of little quick sketchy things, all the geometry is horizontal, vertical, arcing one or two corners. You can have half circles, you can have quarter circles, you could have 3/4 circles as well. So That is the arctangent geometry. So there are other geometries as well, including irregular, which are using a series of angles, irregular angles. It's nice to have, kind of keep the grid as well. It's kind of a base, but you could go along the grid, and then you're kind of angling from that, and you have a series of geometry that works off of that. Maybe this is my pool here. This is patio. And this might be upper patio. And then this might be planting area around the pool. And maybe this is lawn on this side over here. And so kind of these angles that work together, these interlocking shapes are really good there. So that's an option there as well. I would recommend working with those 4 options for this project. There's also curvilinear, where you're using curves, or radial, where you're using kind of radiating circles as well. But you want, within a design, you want to stay with one geometry. So look back through the video and the examples provided, and then go ahead and make a decision about what geometry you want to work with, and then stick with that geometry.